Welcome, coffee enthusiasts, to Brewing for Equity, the podcast brought to you by the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity. Join us as we embark on a flavorful journey through the world of coffee, exploring every nuance and perspective through the eyes of Black and Brown people in the industry. This podcast is a space dedicated to amplifying the voices and experiences of those who contribute to the rich tapestry of the coffee world. We are committed to building a racially diverse and equitable coffee industry. So let's brew conversations, share ideas, and foster a community centered around the love of coffee.
Welcome everyone to Brewing for Equity. I'm Phyllis Johnson, the founder of the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity, and I got an opportunity to host a couple of podcasts through the summer that I'm really excited about, and I'm really excited to speak to the individual I'm talking to today, Catharina Hughey. Catharina and I met about 2-3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Yeah. I was at a public cupping in Denver, and we got a chance to meet. So I just want to first of all thank you for joining today, and to just start out giving you an opportunity to tell us who you are and how you found your way into coffee.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, Phyllis. I'm really excited to be on this podcast and share my coffee journey, because it's a little different, I think, than others who may have started in coffee shops and fell in love with it. But I do feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, if you've ever heard that everything in your life culminates to these moments that you find yourself in. And then you're like, wow, this is a really great fit for me. And I think that's exactly how this happened. I started in my bachelor's in international relations, and I found myself working on my undergrad thesis around Foucault's theory about how you can really think about the power dynamics of institutional systems shaping people's lives, right? And this idea kind of stuck with me about systems. I think it's like, that was before we were saying, and how that was really impacting individuals and how those systems shape us. So I think that, I had this understanding on the institutional level, but I really wanted to understand the people as well. And that's what I tended to find, is that I really geared to people's stories and connecting with them and hearing their experiences and perspectives. And that took me down a path of actually going for my graduate program in organizational leadership and policy practice. And from there, I had the opportunity to work with many nonprofits across Colorado and a very large foundation. And I loved all this work. I love seeing communities come together and really work to advance movements, to advance justice, and to keep that as part of their core. And then I found myself having a coffee shop. I think that we can all agree a coffee shop is a great connector. It is probably, it's a universal connector of people going into coffee shops to have conversation, to meet with friends, family. I mean, movements and revolutions have been started in coffee shops. So it was no surprise that I think I found myself having a coffee shop, and within that coffee shop wanting to continue the social justice work that I've been doing over the years. And that led me to have DIRT Coffee, which stands for Divergent, Inclusive, Representation Transforms. And we say it transforms lives, communities, hiring practices. And the one thing that I thought about coming into this conversation with you today is that representation, the R. Like, having this conversation with you right now is because of your representation in the community. Me seeing you, it was a moment where I was like, here's someone who's doing the work, who's showing up for others. And, it means so much. It meant so much seeing you, and why I wanted to continue reaching out to you and talking to you. It's representation, you show up, it's so important. You never know who's watching. So within the coffee shop, our focus is to work with neurodivergent adults. Neurodivergent is a term that was coined in the 1980s by Judy Singer, and it really encompasses that our cognitive human functioning has a diversity, and that it is a beautiful diversity, a needed diversity, a
Yeah.
biological fact. And that diversity can mean different sensory, different language, different motor skills, different ways of processing and learning. But it's just a beautiful thing that really strengthens us as a society. So working within that community, we're working with people with autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, traumatic brain injuries, severe mood disorders, like those things that people are just learning how to accommodate on an everyday basis.
Wow, wow, wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. When we met and I heard a little bit about your story and your mission, I thought, wow, that's hard work. Uh, as some of my friends, I think last month I got a chance to speak with Pastor Tatum, and he refers to the work as being heart work. Not necessarily so hard, but it is hard too, you know. So when you're managing a business, because I know that Dirt Cafe, Dirt Coffee Bar is a non-for-profit, but it still must run like a profitable business, right?
Yes.
How have you found it in managing, the mission of what you're trying to achieve, as well as the business aspects of it? And do you see it as going hand in hand in some ways? You had talked a little bit about the training programs and how you hope to expand some of the things that you offer. And so share with the listeners um, how you're able to hold on to that mission in the midst of such a changing, retail environment.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. That I think that as a nonprofit social enterprise, we kind of first start out with this idea that nonprofits, their
Mm-hmm.
bottom line is impact, and for profits, their bottom line is revenue, right? And so right there, that starts to create your North Star. Like you're setting your KPIs, your metrics based on getting to that goal line, right?
Sure.
So for
Sure.
us as a nonprofit social enterprise, I am focused on the impact, but I'm focused on the revenue to fuel that impact. So I
Yeah.
am having both of those sides playing. It just ends up my funnel is the impact that we can have in the community. And holding to that mission, there's a couple of things that I think are really important. And I would say this across the board for coffee shops as well, because coffee shops come in with a culture, everybody has a different angle of which they're approaching it, who they're featuring, how they want it to connect with their customers as well. And I think for us, our first value is that we are welcome and accessible. That
Mhm.
is what's so important. It's important for our mission, it's important for our community, and it's important for our customers that come through that door, that they just feel welcome from the moment they
Yeah.
come in, that somebody's greeting them, that we have a very large menu. We have a menu at the counter. We have a braille menu. We have a whiteboard so folks with different types of language needs can
Oh,
communicate with us. We have SOPs and visual SOPs all over the coffee shop, right? And we standardize that. That way everybody can learn and have the same quality of what's coming out. And there's no silly questions at all. I think that in the coffee world, sometimes you can go to a coffee shop and feel a little intimidated by the
right.
drink and the names and not know what they are. And then I tend to find that people tell me their order really quickly and rush it out. And I'm like, okay, let's take a moment, you
Yeah.
know, guys, what milk? Or do you want to ask me a question about it? That is that really bringing in two things, universal design. So
Uh-huh.
universal design being that concept that as we're building new employment opportunities, buildings, schools, that programs that we're thinking about, how will everybody have access to this program? And you build universal design by bringing in other perspectives, right? So when we're working on our coffee shop, our menus, we're asking the deaf community, we're asking the blind community to come in and evaluate, we're asking our advisory council of our organization of neurodivergent folks that are job seekers and working in the community to evaluate what we're doing and give us our feedback, because everybody has a different experience in life and they're going to see something different than the way you saw, right? So the universal design is really important. And then I like to talk about human-centered design as well, really coming back from my background in social work, and that human design is really based on agile design, saying that we just need to focus on the person and have empathy. I always like to hear this, to have sensitivity, not sympathy, right? And
Right.
and then we're building a program. And then what we're doing is we're allowing there to be mistakes. We are just like, the tech company does this so well. I think it's why they are able to progress so quickly, is because they take an idea, they see if it works. If it doesn't work, it goes back, it fixes, and they put it out. They don't wait till this 100%. They're just testing things and being okay with things not working out the first time. So I think that's the same thing in my coffee shop. My staff can suggest things. We're going to try them. And then, we're going to say, did it work or did it not work, right? If it didn't work, what didn't work? How do we debrief? What can we do differently? So between the universal design and the human-centered design, I think it really keeps our focus on what we're trying to do within the coffee shop. I think in terms of additional values on top of being welcome and accessible using this, framework, we're focused on sustainability of our scaling. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm focused on everything in my coffee shop. I want it to be local. I really want to support a local economy, just at the end of your sentence. And your question you asked about, like, in this current economy, post-pandemic, what are you doing differently? And I think that that's the reason I did get into coffee. I was sitting there during the pandemic, and for me, I just noticed how folks were treating other folks in essential jobs. It really, really was mind-blowing almost, that we were forgetting that there was someone who was showing up every day. And I think people forget, this was before we even had the vaccine, and they were showing up in our kitchens, and they were showing up to make your coffee that you could run and grab in and go to work, or go to work at home. And it just got to this point that people would still be like, oh, well, I didn't get my food fast enough, or, they don't have seating right now. And I was like, there's 2 people working this kitchen that's showing up, And I think that was a big part when I had the opportunity to take over a coffee shop and build up its programming, that I wanted intentional hospitality at the center of what we did. And to think of hospitality as a two-way interaction between the person and the person on the other side. And so we talk about this in our team meetings all the time. That means that if you are being rude to that person who is serving you, they do not have the condition to have to smile and just, oh, the customer is right. I know this is not going to be a very popular statement, but I think it's a change that needs to happen, because we saw it get out of line of people throwing things to our workers, to people who are showing up. So intentional hospitality. And that is really important too when we're working with the neurodivergent community, because sometimes their social cues look a little different. That's just across the board, right? And so somebody might be upset with one of my workers because they're like, oh, well, they're just so rude. And I'm like, no, they don't make eye contact, because that's not their, method of communicating. But did you get an amazing cup of coffee, and were you served with respect?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure. I've heard people say things like, I just wish that this person would smile more, and it's like, why do you need that person to smile more? Is it for you to feel comfortable? But what do they feel comfortable doing? So I am 100% with you when it comes to, stepping on the other side of this and seeing yourself as a recipient of services, and what are your expectations as well, instead of constantly driving that it has to be perfect, it has to be this, or to think that it's less than perfect if it steps outside of the norm. Because I think that that's how we need to change the way we think when we go into these spaces. So I'm sure you've curated over time. How long has Dirt Coffee been around? Can you share that with me?
Yeah, the coffee shop kicked off in 2013, and
Okay,
then around end of 2018, we had our first brick and mortar,
okay.
which we had a year up and running, and then we had our fun pandemic hit. And so that, we did have to kind of reassess what we were going to be doing. And then our second coffee shop, though, with that, I think we've still been surviving and thriving. We opened our second coffee shop in East Denver, and we are currently working on our third location to build out, which will have a workforce development center for folks that are neurodivergent, a first of
Oh,
its kind.
okay. Workforce
Yeah.
development. Wow, you are doing you're doing work in so many different areas. Everything it seems that you're doing is very intentional,
Mm.
from where you build a location, how you want to bring in the workforce, how you want to train the workforce. It is, my dog came into my office. It's just an amazing way to think about business. And I hope that in the future, that is just a natural way that we think about business, thinking from a perspective of being inclusive versus,
Mhm.
how do we just build the same? Because I'm sure you've been able to curate routine clients that come in and really enjoy the experience.
Yeah,
Yeah. Could you tell us
they're
a little
wonderful.
about the profile of your clients?
Oh, I'd love to. Our clients on our coffee side and our program side are just the most wonderful people because they do understand inclusivity. They are part of something bigger than themselves when they come in to our coffee shop, and they're open to education. You said that everything that I've been doing is very intentional, and I think it comes from my background of working within micro, meso, macro systems. So this really all goes back to, that bachelor's and that girl writing her undergrad thesis on Foucault and its implications and this in human trafficking, and thinking about all of those pieces. So when I start building out the business model and the program, I think first at the micro level, the
Okay.
direct level that we're working with people. And so, in our program, we have the inclusive employment program. And at the
Mhm.
micro level, we are working with job seekers who are neurodivergent, who have never had a job or have had a very bad experience. The amount of bullying, honestly, and trauma and also just having somebody not believe in you sometimes, when the world doesn't think you can do it, man, that's a lot of weight to carry. And
Yeah.
I think, like, how do it starts to become your truth? So we really have to go through that work with an individual and bring them in that they can learn their skills, that they're able to exercise their strengths, that they're able to accommodate for maybe the things that are a bit more difficult for them, and to advocate and to feel confident and empower them. And we do that, through the coffee shop programming, through workshops. And then on the flip side, we want to do that for our customers too. At the micro level, when we walk in, we want them to know that we're going to talk about all of our products and say, hey, just so you know, like, I'm cognizant that there are many different dietary options out there. So with that, we have a whole gluten-free vegan side and then our gluten side. We separate them on the counters. They're not together, just really making sure that we're thoughtful about that. I do not charge for alternative milks as a coffee shop
Mhm.
because that is health equity and people need to have access to the thing that is the healthiest for them. And we shouldn't be charging up for that. right? That's a systems thing. Once again, it's a piece of trying to gatekeep something from someone. Um, and sometimes different coffees, different milks taste better in our different coffee drinks, right? You know, we want to show off those profiles and those tastes, and be really respectful of the coffee that we're serving. You know, and then not only that, you'll see signs within our coffee shop. We have the neurodiversity model on our wall that explains what is neurodivergent, what is neurodiversity, and what is neurotypical, right? And then somebody sees that and can ask us a question. They're also going to see interns, you know, working on the bar. We just want to make sure at that micro level that we're being intentional with all the pieces, and that there's a why behind it, right? You remember when you have a question and you ask somebody why, and they give you an answer and you go, why? And then eventually they say, because it's always been done this way, because this is how it is, right? You know, we want to make sure that our why has an ending and that it makes sense. And then at the meso level, you know, we're working with employers. So I work with employers on their disability hiring practices, and really focused on their job descriptions. You know, what kind of, are they focused on competencies and skills, or are they still using a model of like, hey, what degree did you get? How many years have you worked, instead of trying to align that job with what the skills are necessary for it. And then working with jobs on how do they retain and, you know, retain and bring in new hiring folks that are from the neurodivergent community. There's so much research to support that, having neurodivergent folks within your workforce in boost your ROI, your culture, your bottom line. I tend to say the reason for that is if you are making room for one marginalized group, you're actually making room for many. And you're making it feasible for people to come in and ask questions. And you know, and you're listening, you know, that's really what's going to really make your business a lot better. And then last, at the macro level, a very large level, we do with the coffee truck, we kind of repurposed it afterward, and we take it into underserved, under-resourced communities, especially communities that kind of like, you know, we have population growth, and some communities are just kind of growing overnight, and we're building a lot of housing, but we're not putting resources into those communities. And so we want to go in and, for sure, make sure that the coffee truck is out there, that there's representation of who's working on the coffee truck. That way, you know, you're feeling like you're out there and you're like, oh, someone who looks like me, who has something, you know, maybe similar to me is working. I can work too. Let me find out more about that. Or for the side of a parent who's gotten a new diagnosis, they're like, oh, there's so much possibility, you know. I want to talk to somebody about it. I want to learn about IEPs, individualized education plans in school. I want to learn what resources there are, what support groups there are, you know. We want to be that moment in the community for folks, you know. And
representation, you know, that word keeps coming up. You know, you talked about representation when we started the conversation, and I think what you're providing, as you were just speaking about, is representation for other neurodivergent folks who get a chance to see folks come into your establishments and move on from there. I know one of the things you shared is that you also help them to move on into other types of work and other positions if necessary, if there's a need or interest. There's not this idea of, you know, you're gonna work here and that's it. So I just love the idea that you really see this from a perspective of building real community, building people, and what you're giving back to the community is incredible, right? Because your community gets to experience something that has been excluded. And what we know at CCRE is that when you unleash that which has not been present in whatever industry, you're going to get innovative ideas, you're going to get creativity, things you never knew that you needed, right? And so that's so incredibly exciting. I'm sure there's plenty of things that your team, individuals have been able to kind of make you think differently about how you're going to run the business, or how someone comes in and interacts, as you just explained, all the differences in the menu, how the menu is set up, and how the products are set up. And so that's quite amazing. You mentioned 3 words. I would like for you, I don't want to put you on the spot, could you share the definitions of those 3 words? I think it would be I know you said you have it on the wall, and it might not be clear in your head, but if you could
Right,
share
right,
with our audience the definitions of those words, because that would be
right.
really helpful.
I'd love to. Yeah. It is so great because for us working with the neurodivergent community, as you were just saying, natural problem solvers. I think a lot of people that are in these different identities that work through a world that isn't set up to acknowledge them in all spaces means we become natural problem solvers. So I think that's like that amazing creativity that you find and that different perspective that you see. And so within our, community, we talk about neurotypical. So that one is for someone who functions within the what's considered normal standard cognitive, and they do not have a diagnosis. So
Okay.
neurotypical. I would be hard pressed to know if anybody is truly neurotypical, but I do think that there's probably a baseline, right? And you don't have a diagnosis. Then you have neurodivergent, which is the cognitive difference that exists within the brain. So that's where you're going to fall into autism, Down syndrome, dyslexia, dyscalculia. Traumatic brain injuries can alter cognitive processing. And really what we're focused here is that it's going to change your learning style, possibly your motor skills, your sensory skills, your language skills, and that it may be something outside of our neurotypical. Okay, so then if you have a workforce together, you have neurodivergent folks and you have neurotypical folks, which means you have neurodiversity. So
See,
neurodiversity is that recognizes the diversity in the human cognition functioning, and we are a neurodiverse planet.
yes, we are. Yes, we are. Time that we start to fully embrace this idea and create solutions, because we all are connected to this kind of diversity, right? We're all connected to it in so many different ways, and it impacts our lives, right? Regardless, we're impacted by it. And so when you talked about all the work you're doing, and as someone who's also finding their way in coffee, because you came from a non-for-profit, strong background in development, how are you finding maneuvering the coffee industry? Are you finding, like myself, you're a Black woman, and how have you found maneuvering, just gaining relationships, partnerships, information, and help building your idea and your plan mission?
Yeah, great question. It's been quite the journey. I don't think that I've really reflected on it, because it's been so go. It wasn't only recently when I was at the expo in Chicago that I just realized how many connections I had made over the 3 years as I was going from booth to booth saying hi to folks, and
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, it's here, this community, and having everybody in one place and seeing it. But I think that that's kind of the core for me is relationship building. I came into this with a limited knowledge. There's so much to learn, the depth, the beauty, the history of coffee. But my first thing was to surround myself with people who were passionate about coffee, passionate about, the work we were doing in the community, but also just amazing and wanted to grow professionally in their coffee. experience and have the ability to do that with me, right? Hand in hand. I think my leadership structure is really more about teamwork and partnership. So I was really fortunate to bring on a bar manager who loves coffee. And not only that, I didn't know this at the time, Phyllis, but he was really focused on bringing up Mexican coffee. He was from Mexico. He felt like he didn't see a lot of that representation. He wanted to see different flavors and profiles and talk about this. For me, I didn't at that time even dawn on me that that was something that was maybe even missing in a fuller picture at times, or how different that would look here in Denver, Colorado. It was just made sense to me,
Yeah.
because of who I am too,
Right.
having different a different background. So I really wanted to support him in his vision, and I loved it. Like for me, it struck a chord. Like, hey,
Yeah.
go compete with Mexican coffee. Go bring this out, and bring that diversity to what we're doing. And with him, we really built up the quality of our coffee, our understanding of making coffee in the coffee shop. And with that, I then started working with vendors and roasters. Everyone has been so open to educate me. I took roasting classes, learned to roast myself. Cuppings, obviously, I was right there, braving it as, showing up, asking questions. Oh man, you just have to. And I think this is the part that people get really uncomfortable, even within the disability community, is asking questions. I
Yeah.
think we sit back so much and we're just like, let me pretend I know so nobody knows I don't know something, or I'm too uncomfortable to ask that question because it might sound stupid, but it's not. It's genuinely how we learn. And I think that people want to be helpful at their core. And that's all I have really found, is that everyone has been very helpful. Amazing books, reading, tasting, roasting, and not only that, understanding the connection of people within the system, from the farmers, the exporters, the importers, the roasters, the retail. Like, where do we all fit into this, and what what does it mean to play a part in this, and how can we do that with more intentionality? And that's, I think, like the next piece for me on this journey, is that I want to bring this work that I've been doing at the counter
Mhm.
across the chain back to,
Yeah.
others, to understand what it means to uplift folks with disabilities within all of these pieces of what we're building, from farm to cup.
Because it doesn't have borders, right?
No.
There are no borders.
There are no
That's
borders. It doesn't have to stop somewhere,
right. It doesn't
Yeah,
just run along the U.S. border. This
yeah.
talent, and
I didn't think I was doing enough, so I was like, let me go ahead and get a little bit, let me get into this roasting game and start thinking about how it can expand our program, because then our participants are getting even more education and more skill building.
Mhm.
But like, as you mentioned, we are very different, that we're not like everybody who comes to the coffee shop has to work at our coffee shop or work at another coffee shop. That might be your passion, but there's so many different things to learn in the coffee shop, and we really focused on customized goal setting for folks. So we're going to work with them on all 5 positions within the coffee shop, and they choose one to work for the rest of their time. But they're also working with a one-on-one job coach the entire time. And these job coaches are social workers, recreational therapists, speech pathologists,
Wow.
occupational therapists. Like, these are amazing, brilliant people that are really focused on not just standing next to someone while they work and simplifying the work, but
Yeah.
making sure that they are tangibly learning transferable skills so they can find the job that they're passionate about. So yeah, it's
You you've had some
roasting add to that.
Yeah, you've had some success stories, I'm sure. I'm sure you've had some folks who've come in, and I think you shared with me in our first conversation where you had a staff member who was over washing dishes, and their relative came in and was shocked, right? Do you get a lot of that where you're able to bring out more in staff than sometimes they do at home?
Oh, yeah. I think that's for anybody, right? Like when you're given the opportunity to lead, to make decisions and not have someone box you in, you're
Yeah,
so we're so much more capable.
yeah,
And I think that it's not because anybody goes out of their way. It's just that we built systems purposely
yeah,
because it makes it seem more manageable as a society to just be like, okay, you're capable of this and you're capable of this and you're going to go here. We have these building blocks. It's this dismantling of these building blocks right now that people start to realize that they didn't have to stay in that one, that they were more capable of what they're doing. And in our case, we have folks that were told they would never have a job and that they should possibly stay in a day program, and then they're here working a cash register and they're our best pastry seller. I'm like, wow, you're the best at this. Or they became a customer's favorite just because they started talking about something they connected about. They can do that at any other job as well. They can be seen, heard, and valued as anybody can. And I
yeah,
think the moment you start sprinkling that in, people just grow. They
yeah,
just grow. And I think that, just like a coffee needs a healthy soil, people need
right.
a great
Yeah,
foundation. And it brings us back to dirt. We really
exactly.
want to plant those seeds and have everybody, not just our program participants and job seekers, but my baristas too. Like you can imagine that they're getting a completely different coffee experience in our coffee shop because they're mentors in that process as well. And they're connecting with customers on a different level to share our mission. They're going to take that with them to wherever they go next and want to see that valued and reciprocated in their
Yeah.
work.
Wow. Well, this is such exciting work. And, one other question that kind of popped up in my mind as we were talking, uh, what got you to this point in wanting to do this sort of work as you look back in your past? And what was it that got you on this pathway? Because coffee is there, I see that. But as you said when we first got started, it really is about the connection with the people and the work you can do with coffee.
Mhm.
So as you think back, what do you think put you on this journey?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, Man, I think two things. I think my grandmother and her love for coffee. I
Okay.
think everybody has a story. That's what I love about coffee. Everybody has their coffee story. And mine was, you know, growing up in Germany and waking up in the early mornings before my siblings and coming into the morning room and my grandmother just sitting by the window with her cup of coffee, always made. Who knows? She probably made it at like 4 in the morning, but she just early. And it was just our moment. It was our
Yeah.
moment to sit there. And, she was one of my biggest supporters, believed in me so much.
Yeah.
And then, that sense of coffee, it brings something very warm to my heart of like coming together and being able to share those moments. And then I think how that translated for me is my own experience then navigating disability. I use the Office of Disability Services in college when I finally actually accessed it fully and realized I needed that support. And it wasn't easy. There were moments where I was one time in class, like bullied by another student who started screaming at me in front of the class, because he felt something was unfair. And it was devastating. And this is for me who I can have passing privilege. He noticed something and so wanted to say something. And yeah, I am. That's why I said so many people go through this, or even navigating my own challenges and working, and certain expectations that were required of work, and it's like I'm capable of doing so many things, but maybe I couldn't do that piece. Well, if I said something, maybe I wouldn't get the job. Or when do I advocate or share my
Yeah.
difficulties? So I think for me it was personal on many levels, but
Yeah.
then it was also, so that's like one part. It was very personal for me. This work is very personal for me. And then on the second side,
Mm.
it goes back to representation. I worked in many nonprofits with amazing, superb leaders, but none of them reflected they didn't look like me. They didn't come from my same background. Um, and I felt that there was a difference to their leadership style as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to have more of that, linear model where I have great people surrounding me and we work as a team, not just like, hey, I said this is how it's going to go and you're going to go make it happen.
Yeah.
Because that's where I feel like you see mistakes happen, because if you say it like that, nobody can raise their voice and say, wait, well, there might be a little problem with this here. This is what we're kind of seeing on our side, or it it just makes me think of those really ill-informed like billboards that go up sometimes with a message, and you're like, did
Right.
did that get no, because somebody probably was in the room and was just like, looks good to me, put it up. And somebody
Exactly.
didn't feel comfortable raising their voice. So I want to have a team where if I'm putting things out, I am asking for feedback. I am
Oh,
asking,
yeah.
hey, is there something going on here that I should be visible about? That way I, don't unintentionally hurt somebody with,
Exactly.
just ignorance, because I didn't know. Because
Yeah.
there's need to ask those questions. So I think for me, that was like in my leadership style that I wanted to see. I really wanted to marry the nonprofit social enterprise model. I've
Yeah.
seen it. It's difficult. It is not easy, right? Because you're asking a nonprofit to think like a business, but that's not our bottom line, as I said at the very beginning of this. So it is a lot of navigation through those two worlds. And not only that, I have a front-facing business. We're not packaging or making something and sending it out. We're
Sure.
being reviewed. And I think that adds a whole nother dimension to it. But I think that as long as we show up authentic and genuine and welcoming, we're in focused on our community and uplifting them, we're
Yeah.
we're going to keep empowering folks with innovation with purpose. And honestly, sometimes there might be a mistake. That's okay. We just need to go back and, you know,
Exactly.
chat it
Wow.
out.
Well, thank you for doing the work that you do. I mean, it's not easy work. But thank you. Thank you for saying that this is worth all that I can put into it and not seeing boundaries to it. Um, being very intentional from the coffees you buy, be it local to where they're coming from and whose hands they're touching to, is the person on the other end of it, when they actually receive your cup of coffee, they know that it's special. They know that so much care. And oftentimes we are fighting our own fight. That's kind of what I always think. And I had no idea the why behind your story, but you really do need something that's stronger than just a passing idea for a business plan or even a non-for-profit. You need something that is rooted deeply inside of you that keeps you going in those tough moments and constant problem solving. So yeah, so thank you for what you do. Thank you for um, making the coffee industry a little bit better and thinking, how can we be more inclusive? How can we build a better, more inclusive industry? So with that being said, how do if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do
Yeah.
they get in touch with you, Catharina?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I also want to just say thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And just thank you for seeing me. I think that that's always a big piece of this. It really, the work that we are doing, is nothing new to you. You've been doing this for 25 years and you have your own personal journey of what you've created, and the CCRE as well as being a manifestation of that calling. And so thank you for holding space for this. All the work that I do, that many of us in, social justice and community advocacy, we're doing it because of the greatness that came before us, of the brave people who came before and gave us the opportunity as well, to keep pushing through and, adding more inclusiveness to the industry in different ways. So thank you. If you want to get in contact with me, there is dirtcoffee.org is our website. And you can also visit us on Instagram and see all of our amazing interns and drinks that we have and events that we're doing here in the community. And lastly, you are always welcome to get directly in contact with me. It's Catharina at dirtcoffee.org. And I appreciate everybody's work in this and hope to hear from people.
Yes, so do I. Hope you do as well. Well, again, thank you for this opportunity to just share your story with the industry. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited about watching you grow and watching us build a more inclusive industry that expands even beyond race, because I think you said it, all tides lift a rising boat, or something to that effect. I think when we look at the communities that are not engaged, we all get something better when they are engaged. So again, thank you. Enjoy your day, and I look forward to watching you grow.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on Brewing for Equity, a podcast by the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity. Thank you to our guest today, Catharina Hughey from Dirt Coffee in Denver, Colorado, discussing what it's like to build an inclusive workforce with focus on neurodivergent individuals. We'll see you next time on Brewing for Equity. This is Phyllis Johnson, founder of the Coffee Coalition for Racial Equity. Thank you.